a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. John R. Bolton. John Robert Bolton is an American attorney, political commentator, Republican consultant and activist, government official, and former diplomat who serves as the 27th National Security Advisor of the United States. He began his tenure as National Security Advisor on April 9, 2018. Bolton served as the United States Ambassador to the United Nations from August 2005 to December 2006 as a recess appointee by President George W. Bush. He resigned at the end of his recess appointment in December 2006 because he was unlikely to win confirmation from the then newly elected Democratic Party Majority Senate. Bolton is a former senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, senior advisor for Freedom Capital Investment Management, a Fox News Channel commentator, and of counsel to the Washington, D.C. law firm Kirkland Ellis. He was a foreign policy advisor to 2012 presidential candidate Mitt Romney. Bolton is also involved with a number of politically conservative think tanks, policy institutes and special interest groups, including the Institute of East-West Dynamics, the National Rifle Association, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, Project for the New American Century, Jewish Institute for National Security of America, Committee for Peace and Security in the Gulf, the Council for National Policy, and the Gatestone Institute, where he served as the organization chairman until March 2018. Bolton has been called a war hawk and is an advocate for regime change in Iran and North Korea and has repeatedly called for the termination of the Iran deal. He was a supporter of the Iraq War and continues to support his decision. He has continuously supported military action and regime change in Syria, Libya, and Iran. A Republican, his political views have been described as American nationalist, conservative, and neoconservative. Bolton rejected the last term and called himself pro-American instead. Early life and education. Bolton was born on November 20, 1948, in Baltimore, Maryland, the son of Virginia Clara, Ginny, a housewife, and Edward Jackson, Jack, Bolton, a fireman. He grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Yale Heights and won a scholarship to the McDonough School in Owings Mills, Maryland, graduating in 1966. He also ran the school's Students for Goldwater campaign in 1964. Bolton attended Yale University, earning a BA and graduating summa cum laude in 1970. He was a member of the Yale Political Union. He attended Yale Law School from 1971 to 1974, where he shared classes with his friend Clarence Thomas, earning a JD in 1974. In 1972, Bolton was a summer intern for Vice President Spiro Agnew. He was hired for the position by David Keene. U.S. National Guard and Army Reserve Service. During the 1969 Vietnam War draft lottery, Bolton drew number 185. As a result of the Johnson and Nixon administration's decisions to rely largely on the draft rather than on the reserve forces, joining a Guard or reserve unit became a way to avoid service in the Vietnam War. Although 42 Army Reserve units were called up with 35 of them deployed to Vietnam shortly after the Tet Offensive in 68-69. Before graduating from Yale in 1970, Bolton enlisted in the Maryland Army National Guard rather than wait to find out if his draft number would be called. He saw active duty for 18 weeks of training at Fort Polk, Louisiana, from July to November 1970. After serving in the National Guard for 4 years, he served in the United States Army Reserve until the end of his enlistment 2 years later. He wrote in his Yale 25th reunion book, "I confess I had no desire to die in a Southeast Asian rice paddy. I considered the war in Vietnam already lost." In an interview, Bolton discussed his comment in the reunion book, explaining that he decided to avoid service in Vietnam because, by the time I was about to graduate in 1970, it was clear to me that opponents of the Vietnam War had made it certain we could not prevail, and that I had no great interest in going there to have Teddy Kennedy give it back to the people I might die to take it away from. Private sector. From 1974 to 1981, Bolton was an associate at the Washington office of Covington and Burling. He returned to the firm again from 1983 to 1985. Bolton was also a partner in the law firm of Lerner, Reed, Bolton and McManus. From 1993–1999, Bolton was executive director of the Committee on Resolutions in the Republican National Committee from 1983 to 1984. Before joining the George W. Bush administration, Bolton was senior vice president for public policy research at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank. From 1997 to 2001, Bolton was an author for the Weekly Standard, an American conservative opinion magazine, from 1997 to 2000, and again from 2014 to 2016. Between 1997 and 2000, Bolton also worked pro bono as an assistant to James Baker in Baker's capacity as Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan's personal envoy to the Western Sahara. He was of counsel in the Washington office of Kirkland and Ellis from 2008 until his appointment as National Security Advisor in 2018. He has been a paid Fox News contributor and a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute since 2006. For 2017, he reported an income of $569,000 from Fox News. He has been running the John Bolton PAC and the John Bolton Super PAC since 1998. From 2013 until March 2018, Bolton was chairman of the Gatestone Institute, a non-profit organization that has published misleading and false anti-Muslim news on its website. Bolton published articles on Iran and other topics on the website. Bolton was formerly involved with the Council on Foreign Relations, Federalist Society, National Policy Forum, National Advisory Board, Manhattan Institute for Policy Research, New Atlantic Initiative, and Project on Transitional Democracies. In 2018, the White House reported that Bolton's total income for 2017 had been $2.2 million, which included $569,000 from Fox News and $747,000 in speaking fees from, among others, the Victor Pinchuk Foundation, Deutsche Bank, and HSBC. Government service. During the Reagan and George H.W. Bush administrations, he worked in several positions within the State Department, the Justice Department, and the U.S. Agency for International Development. He was a protege of conservative North Carolina Senator Jesse Helms. His Justice Department position as an Assistant Attorney General required him to advance Reagan administration positions, including opposition to financial reparations to Japanese Americans held in World War II-era internment camps. The insistence on Reagan's executive privilege during William Rehnquist's Chief Justice confirmation hearings, when Congress asked for memos written by Rehnquist as a Nixon Justice Department official, shepherding the judicial nomination process for Antonin Scalia, and the framing of a bill to control illegal immigration as an essential drug war measure. He was also involved in the Iran-Contra affair. Bolton's government service included such positions as, while working for USAID, Lynn Finney, a legal advisor for the agency, alleged that Bolton threatened to fire her for refusing to lobby for the deregulation of baby formula in developing nations. In January 1998, Bolton signed the project for the New American Century's letter to President Clinton urging regime change in Iraq and stating, "American policy cannot continue to be crippled by a misguided insistence on unanimity in the UN Security Council." Between 1999 and 2001, he served on the board of the Committee for International Religious Freedom. During the George W. Bush administration, Bolton served as the Under-Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security and the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Under-Secretary of State. Bolton worked as the Under-Secretary of State for Arms Control and International Security, sworn into this position on May 11, 2001. In this role, a key area of his responsibility was the prevention of proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. Bolton led the George W. Bush administration's opposition on constitutional grounds to the International Criminal Court, negotiating with many countries to sign agreements, called Article 98 agreements, with the U.S. to exempt Americans from prosecution by the court, which is not recognized by the U.S. More than 100 countries have signed such agreements. Bolton said the decision to pull out of the ICC was the happiest moment of his political career to date. Weapons of mass destruction. Bolton was instrumental in derailing a 2001 biological weapons conference in Geneva convened to endorse a UN proposal to enforce the 1972 Biological Weapons Convention. U.S. officials, led by Bolton, argued that the plan would have put U.S. national security at risk by allowing spot inspections of suspected U.S. weapons sites, despite the fact that the U.S. claims not to have carried out any research for offensive purposes since 1969. In May 2002, Bolton gave a speech entitled, "Beyond the Axis of Evil," in response to President Bush's State of the Union address. In it, he added 3 more nations to be grouped with the aforementioned rogue states, Cuba, Libya, and Syria. The criteria for inclusion in this grouping were state sponsors of terrorism that are pursuing or who have the potential to pursue weapons of mass destruction or have the capability to do so in violation of their treaty obligations. Also in 2002, Bolton is said to have flown to Europe to demand the resignation of Brazilian José Bustani, head of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, and to have orchestrated his removal at a special session of the organization. The United Nations highest administrative tribunal later condemned the action as an unacceptable violation of principles protecting international civil servants. Bustani had been unanimously re-elected for a 4-year term, with strong U.S. support, in May 2000, and in 2001 was praised for his leadership by Colin Powell. He also pushed for reduced funding for the Non-Lugar Cooperative Threat Reduction Program to halt the proliferation of nuclear materials. At the same time, he was involved in the implementation of the Proliferation Security Initiative, working with a number of countries to intercept the trafficking in weapons of mass destruction and in materials for use in building nuclear weapons. Diplomacy. According to an article in the New Republic, Bolton was highly successful in pushing his agenda, but his bluntness made him many enemies. Iran's foreign ministry has called Bolton rude and undiplomatic. In response to critics, Bolton states that his record demonstrates clear support for effective multilateral diplomacy. Bush administration officials have stated that his past statements would allow him to negotiate from a powerful position. It's like the Palestinians having to negotiate with Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. "If you have a deal, you know you have a deal," an anonymous official told CNN. He also won widespread praise for his work establishing the Proliferation Security Initiative, a voluntary agreement supported by 60 countries. Bolton spawned controversy when, in a 2003 speech cleared by the State Department, he described North Korean leader Kim Jong-il as a tyrannical dictator, and saying that, for North Koreans under Kim's rule, life is a hellish nightmare. In response, a North Korean spokesman said, "Such human scum and bloodsucker is not entitled to take part in the talks." Congressional Democrats argued that Bolton's words at the time were undiplomatic and endangered the talks. Bolton later wrote that he had been looking for a hammer to shatter the Clinton administration's 1994 agreed framework with North Korea, an implement he found when the country's uranium enrichment program came to light. Critics argued that Bolton's record of allegedly politicizing intelligence would harm U.S. credibility with the United Nations. President Bush said he wanted John Bolton because he can get the job done at the United Nations. Bolton recalls that his happiest moment at state was personally unsigning the Rome Statute, which had set up the International Criminal Court. Brought to you by WikiVidi documentaries. Would you like to know more